Everything seemed perfect until someone looked closer. Two sisters boarded a flight from Cancun to Miami, but only one returned home alive. April 22nd, 2024, a date that would shatter a Mexican family forever. It started with a phone call at 3 in the morning, the kind that pulls you from sleep into a reality you never prepared for. On the other end, a doctor's voice carried words no parent should ever hear. Señora Reyes, hicimos todo lo posible. Half a world away, inside a beachfront condo overlooking Biscayne Bay, Sofia Reyes lay motionless on the tile floor. Her twin sister Valentina was screaming her name until her throat went raw. The world saw two young Mexican women on what appeared to be a romantic getaway. But beneath the sunset photos and carefully filtered Instagram posts lived a secret. A secret so devastating it would cross international borders, destroy innocent lives, and prove that sometimes the most dangerous person isn't a stranger in a foreign country. It's someone much closer to home, because what killed Sofia wasn't an accident. It wasn't bad luck or a tragic mistake. It was something calculated, deliberate, and born from an emotion as old as humanity itself, jealousy. This is the story of the Reyes twins, two inseparable sisters, one hidden pregnancy, and a betrayal that turned love into a weapon. Stay with me, because the deeper we go into this investigation, the more shocking it becomes. To understand what happened in that Miami condo, you need to know who Sofia and Valentina Reyes really were. This isn't just another true crime story about victims and suspects. This is about two young women who lived their entire existence as a matched set, finishing each other's sentences and sharing the same dreams, until one terrible morning, when that bond was violently severed forever. Sofia Mercedes Reyes and Valentina Mercedes Reyes entered the world on August 3, 1999, at Hospital General de Cancun. Sofia arrived first at 2:17 in the afternoon, with Valentina following just 4 minutes later at 2:21. Even from their first breath, they demonstrated a pattern that would define their lives, close enough to be inseparable, yet distinct enough to maintain their individual identities. Their parents, Carmen and Roberto Reyes, will tell you that raising identical twins in Cancun's bustling hotel zone was like conducting a symphony where two instruments always played in perfect harmony. Carmen, 51, worked as a senior concierge at the Fiesta Americana Grand, while Roberto, 53, managed a popular seafood restaurant near Playa Delfines. They weren't wealthy by tourist standards, but they provided their daughters with something money couldn't buy: stability, culture, and unconditional love. The Reyes family had traditions that anchored them through the chaos of living in a tourist city. Every Sunday morning meant Mass at Parroquia de Cristo Resucitado, followed by breakfast at the Mercado 28, where Carmen would teach the girls how to select the freshest chilies and negotiate with vendors in rapid-fire Spanish. Tuesday nights were sacred family dinners where everyone cooked together, preparing traditional Yucatecan dishes like cochinita pibil and sopa de lima. And Saturday afternoons belonged to the beach, not the crowded hotel zones where tourists congregated, but the quieter stretches near Puerto Morelos where locals gathered. Most people couldn't tell Sofia and Valentina apart. They were identical down to the small birthmark both carried on their left shoulders. But Carmen and Roberto never once confused them. They'd learned to recognize the subtle differences. Sofia had a habit of tucking her hair behind her right ear when concentrating. Valentina's smile always started on the left side of her mouth. Sofia said orale with a slight upward inflection, while Valentina's version was more clipped and definitive. School records from Instituto Educativo del Caribe show both girls were exceptional students. Sofia graduated as class valedictorian in 2017 with a grade point average of 9.8 out of 10. Valentina finished as salutatorian with 9.7. The difference was minimal, but in their competitive yet supportive dynamic, every decimal point mattered. When Sofia's name was called at graduation, the first person standing and applauding wasn't their parents. It was Valentina, tears streaming down her face, pride radiating from every gesture. Their personalities revealed themselves more clearly as they matured. Sophia was introspective and methodical, the twin who color-coded her class notes and finished assignments a week before they were due. She dreamed of becoming a marine biologist, fascinated by the coral reefs that surrounded their coastal home. Valentina was the social connector, the one who knew everyone's birthday and organized surprise parties. She wanted to work in hospitality like their mother, building a career that celebrated Cancun's culture rather than just exploiting it for tourist dollars. Both girls earned partial scholarships to Universidad Anáhuac Cancun in 2017, studying tourism management and environmental science, respectively. This is where Marcus Webb entered their story. Born November 14, 1998, in Tampa, Florida, Marcus came from an upper-middle-class American family. His father owned a successful HVAC company, and his mother taught elementary school. Marcus started as a business major, but discovered he had a talent for software development, particularly mobile applications focused on travel and hospitality. Spring break 2019 brought Marcus to Cancun for what was supposed to be a typical college vacation. Too much tequila, too much sun, and memories that would blur together within months. But on March 12th, at a beach party near the hotel zone, Marcus met Valentina. She was there with Sophia, both girls taking a rare night off from their studies to experience the tourist scene they'd grown up alongside, but rarely participated in. The connection was immediate. Marcus was different from the typical spring breakers who descended on Cancun, treating it like their personal playground. He asked questions about the city beyond the resorts, wanted to know about real Mexican culture, and seemed genuinely interested in Valentina's perspective as someone who'd grown up in paradise that so many people only visited for a week. By summer 2019, Marcus had returned to Cancun twice more. By fall, he was planning his entire academic schedule around breaks that would allow him to visit. By winter 2020, he'd made a decision that shocked his Tampa family. He was moving to Cancun permanently. He found work doing remote software development for American companies while living in Mexico, a digital nomad before the pandemic made it trendy. February 15, 2020, Marcus signed a lease for a modest apartment in Region 92, one of Cancun's residential neighborhoods where locals actually lived. But here's what made the relationship unique. From the very beginning, it was never just Marcus and Valentina. It was always Marcus, Valentina, and Sophia, group study sessions at the university library, weekend trips to cenotes and Mayan ruins, late-night tacos at street stands where the real food was served. The dynamic worked because Marcus genuinely enjoyed Sophia's company, and Sophia never seemed to resent being the perpetual third wheel. Looking back now, those early years in Cancun represent the last chapter when everything was simple. When the biggest drama involved whose turn it was to buy groceries or whether they should split the cost of a weekend trip to Tulum. None of them could have imagined that within 4 years, one of them would be lying in a Miami morgue, while another struggled to explain how paradise had transformed into a crime scene. June 2021 brought graduation, though the ceremony was subdued due to lingering pandemic restrictions. Instead of the traditional celebration, both sisters received their degrees in a half-empty auditorium while their parents watched with masks covering their proud smiles. But they'd made it through, and that was what mattered most. By August 2021, Sophia had landed a position as a research assistant with the Coral Reef Alliance, working on conservation projects throughout the Mexican Caribbean. The salary was modest, about 18,000 pesos monthly, but the work meant everything to her. She spent her days documenting reef health, analyzing water samples, and educating tourists about the fragile ecosystem they'd come to enjoy. Valentina secured a role as a digital content manager for Xcarre Group, one of the region's most respected ecotourism companies. Her job involved creating social media content that showcased Mexican culture authentically, managing influencer partnerships, and ensuring their brand appealed to both international visitors and local pride. She earned 20,000 pesos monthly and loved every minute of it. Their daily routines became a dance of independence and connection. Mornings meant lab work and data analysis for Sofia, content calendars, and brand meetings for Valentina. Lunch breaks were often spent texting each other photos and jokes. After work, they'd meet for runs along the beach or drinks at local bars where tourists rarely ventured. Their bond remained unshakable. Marcus proposed to Valentina on December 24, 2021, during their family's traditional Noche Buena celebration. He did it right, asking Roberto's permission first, presenting a ring he'd saved 6 months to afford, and making his proposal in Spanish to honor the family that had welcomed him so completely. Carmen cried. Roberto embraced him like a son, and Sofia was the first person Valentina showed the ring to. The two sisters squealing and jumping like they were teenagers again. But by fall 2022, subtle cracks began appearing in what had seemed like the perfect cross-cultural love story. Marcus's software work was going well, almost too well. He'd been recruited by a Miami-based tech startup, offering significantly higher pay, but requiring him to be in Florida full-time. The opportunity was extraordinary. Senior developer position, equity in the company, a salary that would triple what he was making remotely. October 2022 brought difficult conversations. Marcus wanted Valentina to move to Miami with him after they married. Valentina wanted to stay in Cancun near her family and the career she was building. Both positions were reasonable. Both were rooted in love and logic, but they were fundamentally incompatible. And then there was Sofia. In every discussion about the future, she was the unspoken factor. Valentina couldn't imagine living in a different country from her twin. Marcus couldn't build a life in Miami, while his fiancée remained emotionally tethered to Cancun and her sister. The engagement that had started with joy was beginning to feel like a countdown to an impossible choice. November brought Marcus's move to Miami. The plan was for him to establish himself, find an apartment, and then Valentina would follow after their wedding planned for June 2023, but the distance revealed fractures that proximity had hidden. Video calls replaced beach walks. Text messages replaced spontaneous tacos at midnight, and the easy intimacy they'd shared began requiring effort and scheduling. December 2022 marked the beginning of what should have been the happiest season of Valentina's life. Instead, it became a study in loneliness. Marcus was building his new life in Miami, working 14-hour days at the startup, sleeping in a studio apartment he shared with a roommate, and promising that things would get better once he got his first equity payout. Valentina was planning a wedding from 1,500 miles away, managing family expectations and trying to convince herself that love could survive time zones and cultural displacement. Every conversation ended with one of them crying or both of them exhausted from trying to bridge a gap that kept widening. Sofia watched her sister fade. The light that had always defined Valentina dimmed week by week. She stopped posting on Instagram. She picked at her food during family dinners. She spent nights staring at her phone, waiting for messages that came later and later as Marcus got consumed by his American dream. January 10th, 2023, brought an unexpected lifeline. Xcaret Group announced a partnership with Bella Vista Hospitality, a Miami-based luxury hotel management company expanding into the Mexican Caribbean. The collaboration would require cultural consultants who understood both markets. Valentina's boss recommended her for the project. The assignment meant regular trips to Miami for meetings, presentations, and site visits. It meant seeing Marcus more frequently. It meant proving to both of them that long distance could work if they just pushed through this difficult phase. Valentina accepted immediately. January 28th, Valentina flew to Miami for the first time. Marcus picked her up at the airport in a used Honda Civic he'd bought the week before, grinning like he'd won the lottery. For 3 days, they pretended they were still the couple who'd fallen in love on a Cancun beach. They walked through Wynwood looking at murals. They ate Cuban food in Little Havana. They stayed up late talking about their future, like it was something they were building together, rather than something pulling them apart. But Marcus's jealousy was already simmering beneath the surface. He noticed how men looked at Valentina when they walked through the design district. He saw the Instagram comments on her posts from the trip. He heard the confidence in her voice when she talked about the Bella Vista project and wondered if she was building a life that didn't need him anymore. On January 30th, Marcus made a comment that should have been a warning sign. "You know Sophia can't follow us everywhere forever, right? At some point it needs to be just us." Valentina laughed it off, but the words lodged in her chest like a splinter. February 2023 brought Sophia to Miami for the first time. Valentina had insisted, if Marcus wanted to understand their family, he needed to see how the Reyes twins operated. Sophia had vacation days saved up and a curiosity about the city her sister's fiancé now called home. February 14th, Valentine's Day. Marcus had planned a romantic dinner for just him and Valentina at a steakhouse in Coral Gables. But Valentina brought Sophia along, explaining that she couldn't leave her sister alone in a hotel room on Valentine's Day in a foreign city. Marcus smiled and said he understood. But inside, resentment was building. That night introduced the twins to someone who would change everything. At the restaurant bar, while waiting for their table, they met Alejandro Dominguez. Born March 22, 1984, in Havana, Cuba, Alejandro had come to Miami as a teenager during the special period. Through intelligence, ruthless business instinct, and connections in both the Cuban exile community and American real estate markets, he'd built a commercial property empire worth an estimated $400 million. Alejandro was everything Marcus wasn't. Older, established, comfortable in his wealth, without being ostentatious about it. He spoke perfect Spanish with a Cuban accent that reminded the sisters of the music their father played on Sunday mornings. He was charming without being aggressive, interested without being intrusive. The conversation started simply. Alejandro overheard them speaking Spanish and asked where they were from. When they mentioned Cancun and the ex-Carré partnership, his eyes lit up. He owned 3 properties in the hotel zone and was always looking for cultural consultants who understood the Mexican market from an insider's perspective. Business cards were exchanged. Alejandro handed them elegant cards with minimal text, just his name and contact information embossed in silver. The sisters gave him their professional emails, slightly intimidated by the simplicity that screamed serious money. Marcus watched this interaction with growing unease. He saw how Alejandro looked at both women, not with the crude appreciation of tourists in Cancun bars, but with genuine interest. He noticed how the sisters relaxed around this stranger, how their Spanish flowed more naturally than when they had to constantly translate for Marcus's limited vocabulary. What should have been a romantic dinner became a study in discomfort. Marcus was quiet through the meal, responding to questions with short answers, watching Valentina check her phone twice to see if Alejandro had emailed. By the time dessert arrived, the tension was thick enough to cut. February the 16th, 2023. Sophia and Valentina returned to Cancun carrying business opportunities they hadn't expected. Alejandro Dominguez had emailed both sisters before their plane even landed, proposing a consulting arrangement. He wanted authentic Mexican perspectives on hospitality ventures he was developing in South Florida's growing Latino market. The proposal was professional and generous. $5,000 per consultation session, with an initial commitment of 4 sessions over 3 months. For context, that was nearly 3 months of Sophia's Coral Reef salary for a few hours of conversation. Valentina made the equivalent in a quarter at ex-Carré. They accepted. How could they not? This was legitimate business, well-paid work that recognized their expertise rather than treating them as decorative additions to meetings. Carmen and Roberto were proud. Their daughters were being valued for their knowledge and cultural insight. March 2023 brought the first official consultation. Alejandro flew both sisters to Miami first class, put them up at the Mandarin Oriental, and spent 6 hours picking their brains about everything from color schemes that appealed to Mexican sensibilities to menu items that felt authentic rather than appropriated. He took notes. He asked follow-up questions. He treated their opinions like the valuable commodity they were. Marcus was not invited to these sessions. He found out about them through Valentina's Instagram stories, photos of the Miami skyline, the hotel pool, dinner at restaurants he couldn't afford. When he called to ask why she hadn't told him she was in town, Valentina seemed genuinely confused. "It's just work, Amma. I didn't think you'd want to sit through hours of us talking about tile colors and menu design. But it wasn't just work, not entirely." Alejandro was 41, never married, and accustomed to getting what he wanted through patience rather than pressure. He wasn't pursuing either sister aggressively, but his attention was unmistakable. Expensive dinners after consultations, gifts that were thoughtful without being inappropriate, a book about coral reef conservation for Sofia, a vintage poster of 1950s Cancun for Valentina. April 12, 2023, marked a turning point nobody saw coming. During the third consultation session, Alejandro asked Sofia about her coral reef work with genuine interest. She spent an hour describing the devastation she witnessed daily, the bleaching events, the tourist damage, the funding shortages that prevented meaningful intervention. What if money wasn't the limitation? Alejandro asked, "What could you accomplish with real resources?" Sofia laughed, assuming it was a hypothetical question. But 3 days later, Alejandro's foundation wired $50,000 to the Coral Reef Alliance with instructions that Sofia should lead a restoration project of her choosing. No strings attached, no publicity required. Just money directed toward work that mattered. Sofia was overwhelmed. This wasn't a gift to impress her. This was recognition of her expertise and passion. Alejandro had listened to her talk about her work and responded by funding it. That kind of attention was intoxicating to someone who'd spent years being seen primarily as half of a matched set. May 2023 brought the fourth consultation and a shift in dynamics. After the business meeting concluded, Alejandro suggested they stay an extra day in Miami. Not for work, but because he wanted to show them his favorite parts of the city, the places tourists never saw. The Cuban coffee shops in Little Havana, where old men played dominoes. The Haitian art galleries in Little Haiti. The Colombian bakeries in Doral. Valentina couldn't stay. She had meetings at Xcaret that couldn't be rescheduled. But Sofia had flexibility with her field research schedule. She agreed to stay, telling herself it was networking, professional relationship building, nothing inappropriate. May 14th evening. Alejandro took Sofia to his penthouse in Brickell, not as a seduction move, but to show her his private art collection. He collected works by Caribbean and Latin American artists, pieces that celebrated the cultures he came from and the communities he served. They spent hours discussing art, immigration, identity, and what it meant to build a life between two worlds. What happened next wasn't planned or predatory. Two adults, attracted to each other, connected by conversation that went deeper than either expected. It happened once, just once. Sofia flew back to Cancun the next morning, carrying confusion, guilt, and something she wouldn't discover for 3 more weeks. She was pregnant, June 14th, 2023. Sofia sat on the bathroom floor of the apartment she shared with Valentina, staring at a pregnancy test showing 2 pink lines. She'd bought it at a Farmacia Similares after missing her period and experiencing nausea that had nothing to do with seasickness on research. Boats. The father was a 41-year-old Cuban-American millionaire she barely knew. A man who'd shown her kindness and respect, but who she'd slept with exactly 1 time, in what felt like a fever dream in a Brickell penthouse. She wasn't in love with him. She wasn't even sure if what they'd shared was real connection or just 2 lonely people finding temporary comfort. For 6 hours, Sofia carried the secret alone. Then, like always, she told Valentina, Because twins don't keep secrets, especially not secrets this big. Valentina's first reaction was shock, then concern, then protective fury. Did he pressure you? Did he use his money or position? Sophia assured her it wasn't like that. It had been mutual, consensual, even tender. Just spectacularly ill-timed and complicated. June 15th, 11:47 at night. Sophia called Alejandro. He answered immediately, his voice warm with surprise. But when she told him why she was calling, the warmth disappeared, replaced by a long silence that felt like the connection had dropped. "You're certain?" he finally asked. "I took 3 tests." Another pause. "I need time to think about this. Can I call you tomorrow?" June 16th, exactly 24 hours later. Alejandro called back, his voice different. More controlled, more distant. More businessman than the man who'd discussed art and identity until dawn. "I can send you $75,000, Alejandro said without preamble. "That should cover any medical procedures and time off work you need. I'll have my attorney handle the transfer discreetly. Medical procedures, not the pregnancy, not the baby." The clinical language made Sophia's stomach turn, but she also understood his position. He was a public figure in Miami's business community. An unmarried pregnancy with a 23-year-old Mexican woman he barely knew could damage the reputation he'd spent decades building. "I need time to think," Sophia told him, her voice steadier than she felt. June 18th brought another call. Alejandro had seen a news report about a woman in Texas who died from complications during a medical procedure. The story had shaken him, forced him to confront what he was actually asking Sophia to do. "I can't ask you to risk your health for my convenience," he said. "But I also can't be involved publicly. My business relationships, my community standing, it's complicated." June 25th, after a week of silence, Alejandro called with a completely different proposal. "Keep the baby. I'll provide financial support. I can't be part of the child's life directly, but I'll make sure you both never worry about money. The child will have every opportunity." It wasn't love. It wasn't commitment. But it was responsibility, acknowledgement, a future that didn't require impossible choices. Sophia accepted not because it was perfect, but because it was something. July 2023 brought an unexpected complication. Marcus proposed moving the wedding up from June 2024 to September 2023. His startup was doing well, he'd gotten his first equity payout, and he wanted Valentina in Miami permanently. No more long distance. No more consultations that took her away for days at a time. Just them, finally building the life they'd promised each other. Valentina was torn. She loved Marcus truly, but Miami felt foreign in ways that went beyond language and geography. And leaving Sophia now, while her twin was pregnant and navigating an impossible situation, felt like abandonment. August 3rd, 2023, the twins' 24th birthday. Marcus flew to Cancun for the celebration, bringing gifts and enthusiasm and pressure disguised as love. At dinner with the Reyes family at Roberto's restaurant, Marcus announced that he'd found a perfect apartment in Coral Gables. 2 bedrooms, walking distance to his office, ready for move-in September 1st. 2 bedrooms. Carmen asked, "Planning for a family already?" Marcus laughed. "Eventually. But the 2nd bedroom is for when Sophia visits. I know how important that is to Valentina, but his eyes said something different when he looked at Sophia. They said he knew she was the obstacle between him and the life he wanted. They said he was tired of competing with a twin sister for his fiancée's attention. They said something darker that nobody wanted to acknowledge. September 2023 brought Valentina's move to Miami. Not permanently, she insisted. Just a trial period to see if she could build a life there while maintaining her work with ex-Corette remotely. Sophia helped her pack, both sisters crying while pretending they weren't. October through December were brutal. Valentina was lonely in Miami, missing her family and her twin. Marcus was increasingly controlling, checking her phone, questioning why she video-called Sophia every night, suggesting that maybe she needed to establish independence from her sister, Sophia. Meanwhile, was navigating early pregnancy alone, morning sickness that lasted all day, exhaustion that made field research nearly impossible. and the secret she was keeping from everyone, except Valentina and Alejandro, a secret that was getting harder to hide as her body changed. January 14th, 2024. Sophia's pregnancy was entering the second trimester and showing. She'd started wearing loose clothing, avoiding family gatherings, making excuses about why she couldn't join beach days where a swimsuit would reveal everything. Carmen was suspicious. Mothers always know. But Sophia deflected every question with reassurances about work stress and dietary changes. The lie was getting harder to maintain. January 20th brought Marcus to Cancun for what he called a family planning discussion. He wanted to set a firm wedding date, wanted commitment from Valentina, wanted an end to the limbo that was destroying their relationship. During dinner at the Reyes home, Marcus made an announcement. "I think Sophia should come to Miami for an extended visit. See what Valentina's life is like there. Understand why this move is so important for our future." It sounded generous. It sounded like bridge building, but Valentina saw through it immediately. Marcus wanted Sophia away from Cancun, away from her support system, in his territory where he controlled the environment. February 8th, 2024. An invitation arrived via FedEx to both sisters. Elegant cardstock, professional printing. You are cordially invited to Miami, April 19th through 26th, 2024. Accommodations and expenses provided. It was signed by Alejandro Dominguez. The stated purpose was another consultation series, but the subtext was clear. Alejandro wanted to see Sophia to check on the pregnancy, to reassure himself that his financial support was being used appropriately. He'd arranged for both sisters to come because he understood by now that separating them was impossible. March 2024 brought intensive planning. Flights were booked. A luxury condo in Coconut Grove was arranged. Airport transfers were scheduled. Every detail was handled by Alejandro's assistant with the efficiency that serious money provides. Marcus insisted on being involved. This was his city, his territory, his chance to finally control the narrative. He suggested a farewell dinner at his apartment the night before they flew out. April 18th, just the three of them. A proper goodbye before the sisters spent a week in Miami without him. Valentina agreed, not seeing the danger. Sophia had reservations, but couldn't articulate why. Something about Marcus's eagerness felt wrong, but she dismissed it as pregnancy hormones, making her paranoid. April 18th, 2024, 7:30 in the evening. Marcus's apartment in Coral Gables. He'd spent the afternoon cooking traditional American comfort food, grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, a salad with vinaigrette he'd made from scratch. For Sophia, who couldn't drink alcohol because of the pregnancy, he'd prepared a special virgin mojito with fresh mint and lime. The table was set with care that felt almost aggressive in its perfection. White tablecloth, matching plates Marcus had probably bought specifically for this dinner, candles that created ambiance while making everything feel staged. Valentina noticed but said nothing. Sophia felt the tension immediately, but attributed it to her usual discomfort around Marcus lately. 15 p.m. The sisters arrived together, as always. Sophia was visibly pregnant now at 23 weeks, though she wore a flowing dress that minimized the bump. Valentina was protective, hyper-aware of her sister's needs, in a way that made Marcus's jaw tighten imperceptibly. They talked about the Miami trip. The consultation work Alejandro had planned, the luxury condo overlooking Biscayne Bay, the possibility of Sophia meeting with marine conservation groups while she was there. Normal conversation that felt wrong because of everything left unsaid. Marcus kept refilling Valentina's wineglass while watching Sophia sip her virgin mojito. He'd made it special, he said. Fresh mint from the farmer's market, lime juice squeezed by hand, a touch of agave syrup and sparkling water. He'd researched pregnancy-safe beverages online, wanting Sophia to feel included in the evening, despite not being able to drink alcohol. What Marcus didn't mention was the other research he'd done. the late-night searches that his browser history would later reveal. Substances that cause miscarriage, pesticides and pregnancy loss, chemicals that become toxic when heated. How to induce abortion without detection. The organic pesticide he'd purchased from a garden supply store 3 weeks earlier sat in a small bottle hidden in his bathroom cabinet. The label promised it was safe for indoor use and low toxicity to mammals. What it didn't mention was how the organophosphate compound transformed when exposed to extreme heat after metabolizing in human tissue. 20 p.m. Marcus excused himself to the kitchen, ostensibly to check on dessert. In reality, he was standing over the sink with Sophia's half-empty mojito glass, adding 3 drops of diluted pesticide to the pale green liquid. His hands shook slightly. His breathing was shallow, but he told himself this was necessary, merciful even. A small amount would cause a miscarriage. Sophia would recover. The connection to Alejandro would be severed, and Valentina would finally understand that her future was with him, not perpetually tied to her sister's increasingly complicated life. He brought the glass back to the table, setting it in front of Sophia with a smile. "Drink up. I made extra mint simple syrup. It's really good." Sophia took a long sip, then another. The mojito was delicious, refreshing after the heavy meal. She finished the glass over the next 20 minutes, while they ate key lime pie Marcus had bought from a Cuban bakery on Calle Ocho. By 10:30 p.m., Sophia was feeling tired and slightly nauseous. "Pregnancy stuff," she said apologetically. "I should probably get back to the hotel and rest before our early flight." Valentina stood immediately, protective instinct activated. "Of course. Let's go." Marcus hugged them both goodbye at the door. He held Valentina longer than necessary, whispering that he'd miss her, that a week felt like forever, that he loved her more than anything. He hugged Sophia briefly, feeling guilt pulse through him like a physical pain. But he'd convinced himself this was protection, not murder, a necessary intervention to save his relationship. The sisters left, walking to their rental car under Miami's humid night sky. Neither noticed anything wrong. Neither suspected that Sophia was carrying a chemical time bomb in her bloodstream, dormant and waiting for the catalyst that would transform it from mild irritant to lethal poison. April 19th, 2024. 6:30 a.m., Miami International Airport. The sisters checked in for their 9:15 a.m. flight to Cancun, a quick trip home so Sophia could pack properly for the week-long Miami stay. They'd return that same evening on a 7:45 p.m. flight. Sophia felt worse than she had the night before. Nausea that wouldn't quit, a headache building behind her eyes, fatigue that felt different from normal pregnancy exhaustion. She attributed it to early morning travel and being in her second trimester. The flight back to Cancun was uneventful. Sophia slept most of the way, her head on Valentina's shoulder like when they were children. They landed at 2:30 p.m. local time, went home to pack, and returned to the airport by 5 p.m. for their evening flight back to Miami, April 19th, 10:15 p.m. The sisters arrived at the luxury Coconut Grove condo Alejandro had arranged. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. 2 bedrooms with California king beds. A kitchen stocked with groceries chosen specifically for Sophia's pregnancy dietary needs. Every detail anticipated, every comfort provided. They unpacked, showered off the travel day, and settled in. Sophia was exhausted but couldn't sleep. The nausea was persistent, the headache had worsened, and she felt a vague anxiety she couldn't name. "Maybe I should make some tea," she said to Valentina around 11:30 p.m. "Chamomile always helps when I feel like this." She found the electric kettle, filled it with filtered water, and set it to boil. The water reached 212 degrees Fahrenheit, bubbling and steaming. Sophia poured it over a chamomile tea bag in an elegant ceramic mug, added a touch of honey, and took it to the living room where Valentina was scrolling through her phone. The first sip was perfect, hot, soothing, exactly what she needed. She drank half the mug within 10 minutes, feeling the warmth spread through her chest. What Sophia didn't know was that the boiling water was triggering a chemical reaction with the dormant organophosphate compound in her system. The heat was converting the pesticide from a relatively mild irritant into a neurotoxin that would attack her nervous system, kidneys, and liver simultaneously. By midnight, Sophia was vomiting. By 1 a.m., she couldn't stand without assistance. By 2 a.m., Valentina was calling 911, her voice breaking as she tried to explain to the dispatcher that her sister was pregnant and something was very, very wrong. By 3 a.m. on April 20th, 2024, Sophia Reyes was in the intensive care unit at Jackson Memorial Hospital, fighting for her life while doctors tried to understand what was killing her. April 20th, 2024, 3:47 a.m. Jackson Memorial Hospital's intensive care unit looked like a war zone, fighting an invisible enemy. Sophia's body was shutting down system by system, despite every intervention the medical team attempted. Her kidneys were failing. Her liver enzymes were catastrophically elevated. Her neurological responses were deteriorating by the minute. Valentina stood outside the ICU, still wearing the pajamas she'd thrown on when calling 911. Mascara streaked down her face, praying in Spanish to a God she wasn't sure was listening. Alejandro had arrived within an hour of being notified. His usual composed demeanor shattered as he demanded answers nobody could provide. At 6:22 a.m., after fighting for 3.5 hours, Sophia Mercedes Reyes was pronounced dead. The official preliminary cause, acute multi-organ failure of unknown origin. Her unborn child, a boy at 23 weeks gestation, died with her. The phone call to Carmen and Roberto Reyes in Cancun came at 7:15 a.m. Carmen's screams could be heard throughout their entire neighborhood. Roberto collapsed, unable to process that one of his daughters was gone, while the other was alone in a foreign country with her sister's body. What should have been a routine autopsy became a forensic mystery when Dr. Patricia Chen, the Miami-Dade medical examiner, discovered traces of an organophosphate compound in Sophia's bloodstream, not in her stomach contents, not in her digestive tract, but in her blood, suggesting the poison had been introduced days earlier and had been circulating through her system, waiting for activation. April 22nd brought toxicology results that made no sense. The pesticide found in Sophia's system was the kind used for indoor plant care, not something you'd encounter in food, water, or normal daily life. The concentration suggested deliberate administration, but the timeline was bizarre. Based on metabolic markers, the compound had been introduced at least 36 hours before symptoms appeared. Detective Maria Santos of Miami-Dade Police Department took lead on what was now officially a homicide investigation. Her first step was reconstructing Sophia's final 72 hours. Every meal, every drink, every location, every person she'd encountered. The condo was tested. Everything came back clean. The tea was analyzed. Nothing. The hotel they'd stayed at the first night. Negative. Every dead end should have been discouraging. But Detective Santos knew that when you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. April 23rd. During her interview with Valentina, one detail emerged like a beacon. We had dinner at Marcus's apartment the night before our first flight. He made Sophia a special mocktail because she couldn't drink alcohol. Detective Santos pulled Marcus's credit card records. April 1st showed a purchase at Green Paradise Garden Supply for $38.76. The receipt, obtained via warrant, listed one item: Organic Guard Indoor Plant Pesticide. Concentrated formula. His browser history, extracted from his laptop during a search of his apartment, told the entire story. Searches dating back to February, when he'd learned about Sophia's pregnancy. Natural ways to cause miscarriage. Pesticides that affect pregnancy. Chemicals that become toxic when heated. Time delay poisoning. Methods. Text messages between Marcus and Valentina revealed his growing obsession with separating the twins. You'll never be your own person while Sophia is your shadow. I can't compete with someone who's been in your life since before you were born. The pregnancy is going to make everything worse. April 25th, 2024, Marcus Webb was arrested at his workplace, led out in handcuffs while his co-workers watched in shock. During his interrogation, he maintained innocence for 8 hours before the evidence became overwhelming. His confession came at 11:34 p.m., recorded on video that would later be played in court. I just wanted the pregnancy gone. I thought a small amount would cause a miscarriage, some cramping, maybe a few days of feeling sick. I didn't know it would kill her. I swear I didn't know about the heat activation. I researched it, but I must have missed that part. I never wanted Sophia dead. I just wanted my life with Valentina back. The trial began October 7th, 2024. Prosecutors presented overwhelming evidence: the purchase records, the browser history, the chemical analysis matching the pesticide in Marcus's apartment to the compound in Sophia's system, and the mechanism of action showing how boiling water had transformed a mild poison into a lethal one. Marcus's defense argued lack of intent to kill, claiming he'd only wanted to terminate the pregnancy and had been ignorant of the pesticide's properties. But Florida law was clear: if you administer poison that results in death, intent to kill is presumed. November 18th, 2024. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty of first-degree murder. Guilty of killing an unborn child. Guilty of conspiracy to commit murder. December 3rd, 2024. Sentencing day. Judge Raymond Torres addressed Marcus directly. You played God with Sophia Reyes's life because you viewed her existence as inconvenient to your plans. You researched how to poison her, you administered that poison, and you watched her leave your home carrying death in her bloodstream. Your ignorance of the exact mechanism does not absolve you. Your jealousy does not excuse you. Your desire to control your fiancé's life does not justify what you did. Marcus Webb was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole, plus 25 years for the death of the unborn child. Valentina Reyes returned to Cancun a different person. The twin who defined her entire identity was gone. The man she'd planned to marry had murdered her sister out of jealousy disguised as love. She moved back into her childhood bedroom, unable to face the apartment she'd shared with Sophia. Carmen and Roberto, aged a decade in 6 months. Their family dinners now had an empty chair that nobody could look at. The beach walks felt wrong without Sophia explaining coral reef ecosystems. The traditions that had anchored them felt hollow. Alejandro Dominguez established the Sophia Reyes Marine Conservation Foundation with an endowment of $2 million. It wasn't enough. Nothing would ever be enough. But it ensured her work would continue, that coral reefs would have an advocate, that her name would mean something beyond tragedy. 2 sisters boarded a plane from Cancun to Miami in April 2024. Only one came home. The poison that killed Sophia wasn't administered in a foreign country by a stranger. It was given to her in Coral Gables by someone who claimed to love her family, mixed into a virgin mojito served with a smile. The greatest danger didn't come from the wealthy Cuban businessman or the unfamiliar city. It came from jealousy wearing the mask of love, from control disguised as protection, from a man who couldn't accept that some bonds can't be broken just because they're inconvenient. Marcus Webb sits in Florida State Prison, serving life without parole, insisting he never meant for anyone to die. But intent and impact are different things. And Sophia Mercedes Reyes is still dead.